on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
I'm satisfied with the answers that she has given repeatedly now on this. She will cooperate with the investigation as you would expect.
Angela Rayner investigated by police, but hang on a minute.
So it seems, Mr. Speaker, potential criminality has been found in Downing Street.
Wow. And
Don't think that we are not, it's not education, but there are priorities.
clerics praise the Taliban. Labour versus the Tories on defence. Who do you trust? Also, a man sues the government over climate change. Plus,
when the bus comes in Portland, not everyone can get on it.
luxury buses for migrants while locals slum it. And
Pleasure to meet you, Your Majesty.
is Meghan blocking Harry from making up with wills? On my panel, it's Conservative parliamentary candidate Alex Dean, Apprentice finalist and social commentator Joanna Jarju, and political commentator Alex Armstrong. And get ready, Britain. Here we go. Taliban fanatics everywhere. Next.
Patrick, good evening. The top stories. Angela Rayner says she will step down if it's determined that she committed a criminal offence over her tax affairs. It's over the sale of her council house in Stockport a decade ago. Questions have been asked about whether she paid the right amount of tax and if it was her main home. In a statement, Angela Rayner said the questions raised relate to a time before she was an MP and that she's taken expert tax and legal advice. Sir Keir Starmer says Labour welcomes the investigation.
We welcome this investigation because it will allow a line to be drawn in relation to this matter. I am fully confident that Angela Rayner has not broken the rules. She will cooperate with the investigation as you would expect, and it's really a matter for the police.
The former chief executive of Royal Mail says he doesn't know if money paid by sub-postmasters, who were wrongly accused of stealing, was recorded as profit. Adam Crozier told the Horizon Inquiry this afternoon that he assumed the money was accounted for by the company's financial team, but he admitted that he couldn't be sure. He also said he was not aware that lawyers within the Royal Mail group conducted prosecutions, and he conceded that sub-postmasters shouldn't have been treated as thieves. Energy Minister Graham Stewart has announced he's standing down from his cabinet role to focus on local issues. The Beverley and Holden SNP said he plans to focus on issues like making roads safer, broadband delivery and increasing the number of defibrillators in his constituency. Justin Tomlinson now takes on the role of Minister for Energy Security and Net Zero. A 23-year-old man has denied murdering a Good Samaritan who died as he tried to help a stranger. 46-year-old Chris Marriott was on a post-Christmas walk with his wife and 2 young children when he stopped to help a woman who was unconscious in the street. He was killed when a car ploughed into a small crowd following a disturbance in Sheffield. Hassan Jangor denied the murder and manslaughter of Mr Marriott, but pleaded guilty to causing his death by dangerous driving. And legendary Italian fashion designer Roberto Cavalli has died at the age of 83. Italian news agency ANSA reported he died at home in Florence after a long illness. The fashion guru founded the company in 1975, quickly becoming known for his animal print designs. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Patrick.
There is a Trojan horse in Britain, hardline Muslims who would be content to send us back to the Dark Ages with Sharia law. It's emerged that several prominent figures in the British Muslim community praised the Taliban. Between them, they said the Taliban were beautiful, they felt free in Afghanistan and defended their treatment of women. Can I just make the point that the Taliban stones women to death, flogs them? People come from miles around to view the stonings and the floggings. Girls over the age of 12 have been mostly excluded from school, and the government has also stopped most Afghan female staff from working at aid agencies. They've closed beauty salons, barred women from public spaces like parks and gyms, and curtailed travel for women in the absence of a male guardian. Despite this, Hamid Mahmood, the founder of an Islamic girls' school in East London, told an audience of the freedom he felt in Afghanistan. It was somewhat quite sad and painful as an experience, leaving that land, because I will be very honest, and I've said this very clearly, that there was something there, a feeling of outright freedom. He can go and live there if he wants, can't he? Here are some of the things being said about the Taliban.
The Afghan government, they have a focus because, and after speaking to many ministers, we realized what freedom meant.
Don't think that we are not, it's not education, but there are priorities.
One of them is reportedly Haitham al-Haddad, who said Western secular influences were being driven into the minds of the students who were speaking against the Sharia, and many vices were creeping in. When it is time to rebuild the country, we cannot tolerate division, and therefore temporary suspension of liberal secular education took place. Right, OK, we have that over here, though, don't we? The old Western set. Anyway, according to newspaper reports, Haddad was previously described as one of the most dangerous men in Britain, said that being gay was a scourge and a criminal act. He reportedly said the Japanese tsunami in 2011, which killed more than 15,000 people, was a just punishment for the country not being Muslim. On child marriage, he reportedly said, the earlier the better, especially for girls, but you have to be careful of the legal issues. These people walk amongst us. Mufti Ismail Satir told the 250-person strong crowd at Queen Mary's University in London, "We went to Afghanistan with a very open mind. It brought back to me the stories of the Shahaba, companions of Prophet Muhammad, that we read. They reminded me of those who sacrificed for Islam and those who were willing to do anything for Islam." People might say this is just a few fringe people who don't really mean any harm. OK, fair enough. So why was it that an extremist hate cleric called Inayat Ullah Abbasi, who said, if anybody dares to criticise our Prophet Muhammad, that person should be declared as a disbeliever and hence his/her head should be chopped off, why was it that he was able to come from Bangladesh and draw big crowds in Nottingham? He was set to draw a big crowd in London until GBNews stepped in, alerted the Home Office, and he was sent on his way. They can draw crowds because there is a market for them against some elements of the Muslim community in Britain. The taxpayer has been funding the Counter-Terror Prevent programme. A report found that key figures in organisations funded by Prevent are alleged to have supported the Taliban, defended militant Islamist groups banned in the UK and hosted hate preachers themselves. The latest polling shows that around only 1 in 4 British Muslims say it would be undesirable to have Sharia law. 52% want to make it illegal to show a picture of the Prophet Muhammad. Only around 28% are opposed to making homosexuality illegal. There's widespread sympathy with Hamas, and the younger Muslims are apparently the most extreme. There is a bloke at the moment trying to sue the government because their failure to combat climate change is impacting his health. Does that mean we can all sue the government for letting a Trojan horse into Britain? Let's get the thoughts of my panel. This evening I am joined by Conservative candidate Alex Dean, entrepreneur and social commentator Joanna Jarju, and political commentator Alex Armstrong. Thank you very, very much for joining me. Alex Dean, I will start with you. Have we allowed a Trojan horse into Britain, do you think?
We have known for some time that people expressing views like this are in our country. I hadn't known. What's news to me is that Queen Mary University hosts events where they get an uncontested platform to voice them. And I'm sure they'll be being asked some questions, and they'll be asking themselves some questions about whether that was right. The main thing for me is that when you voice support for a regime like that internationally, there is something we can do about it. We have prescribed Hamas as a terrorist organisation. when you talk about the Taliban, you'll talk about an organisation that's carried out scorched earth policies on its own population, sold women into sexual slavery, banned education for women after a very basic level, conducts corporal and capital punishment in ways that we would think utterly barbaric, and has starved and massacred people in their own country. Surely that's an organisation that should be prescribed as well.
And it's a really good point, because earlier on, I was looking at whether or not the Taliban are a prescribed terror organisation. They are not a prescribed terror organisation in Britain, which is absolutely bonkers. So people can go and voice support for them, and that's absolutely fine. Joanna, some of the things said, I mean, look, as a woman, you must surely be absolutely sickened to see that people are supporting a regime that would, you know, stone women to death, ban the education of women, ban any free rights, surely.
Yeah, no, I am completely, and I agree with you that, you know, the Taliban should probably be categorised as terrorists. I think that it's almost as if when things like this happen, we talk about, you know, what these bad people are doing, and they're always going to exist, in my opinion. But I almost feel as if the energy should be about the processes and how we actually identify these people. So, for example, for Queen Mary University, they're basically saying that this was a commercial booking. But for a university where you know that people will be attending, listening to these type of things, they'll deplatform other people, but it seems as if... Left, right and centre, yeah, but it seems as if they don't really go through the rigorous processes. And I think that that's what we should be thinking about, and it overspills even when it comes to things like the Home Office. And, you know, like you were saying, why is it that GBNews had to flag about somebody? Why isn't there a process? So it just seems as if we spend so much time talking about it, they're always going to exist, but how do we actually weed the bad people out?
Look, no doubt, Alex, those people will say, look, it's just our view. We went to Afghanistan. You've not been to Afghanistan, as far as I'm aware. You've not been to Afghanistan. What do you really know about it? It's well within their rights to sit on a platform and say whatever they like.
Look, I mean, there's an element of freedom of speech, and quite frankly, I would rather the views were out in public so we can challenge them than they were pushed underground and, you know, radicalising young people, because it is young Muslim boys that are being radicalised in the majority. I would say to those people, many of those men who are British-born, their parents came to this country to escape those extremist policies that were implemented in their own countries that drove those countries into the ground. And quite frankly, Sharia law has no compatibility with British values and British rights. So don't come and bring those things here that nobody, I guarantee you, polled the majority of British people, 98% of people would say absolutely not.
Just other, Alex. These views, I'm not sure how uncommon they actually are. In fact, I think they are worryingly common. Those people are big players. A lot of them have big social media followings. A lot of them have big influence in communities. There's a lot of that going on, right? And I am really, really concerned that actually the things that we heard there are quite mainstream.
So, Alex has a point that the Taliban drove out a number of more moderate people who are now finding their own children being radicalised away from them in their community. Because the Taliban had two goes, right? They 96 to early 2000s, they were in control of Afghanistan, and now they're back. In that first time, they destroyed almost all art. They banned almost all music, except for very basic drumming. So if you were a musician in Afghanistan, that was it for you. Of course, they persecuted homosexuals appallingly. And if you were an artist, you were a musician, you happened to be gay, you were someone who believed in liberal rights for women, you left Afghanistan.
What about you know, the comments there when it comes to girls getting married? The younger, the better, but you've got to watch out for the law. I mean, I had a guy on my show, I think it was maybe on Monday night, it might have been, who was saying very, very similar views. I mean, I'm deeply concerned about how widespread those views are.
I don't think that it's necessarily mainstream, though. I'm not saying that, you know, there isn't a significant number, but, you know, these polls come out and it says, 52%, and then you actually find out that they actually polled 1,000 people, you know, so I don't always take things like that as gospel, but I do think that it's a problem that we pay attention to.
That's fair, right? So let's not make general points. Talk about the specific. There was a guy on that platform who runs a school for girls saying that he idolised an environment in which secondary education for women is banned.
But then the main question is then, where is that guy now? So we see it there in black and white. No, exactly. So how come nothing's happened to it?
But this is part of the problem, right? Because, you know, they've not broken any laws, as far as I can tell. They've not broken any laws. They've not done anything, you know, illegal or anything like that. They're not praising a banned terror group. I don't think it's right to say, well, we can just deport those people. I don't know whether or not a guy was born in Britain or not, but, you know, he's on a platform. There's not a quick fixed.
There is. We should prescribe the Taliban, and they can be therefore be prosecuted.
But it doesn't change the fact that they are allowed to say these things. They're allowed to say, I agree with these laws.
Yes.
What we actually do need is strong British figures, like a strong British Prime Minister, for example, to come out and say, we, as a country, do not tolerate these values here,
Alex,
and if you continue to propagate them, then we will shut you down.
But then that's hot air without the law to back it up.
If people on the marches can express that, which I don't think should be happening anymore, by the way, but people on the marches can express their views to a degree. But if they hold up signs saying, I'm in favour of Hamas, they're breaking the law. It's a prescribed terrorist organisation, they can prosecute it.
So are people like that, like the people that we saw in some of those videos, like the people that I quoted there, are they here to assimilate, or are they here to take over?
There are always going to, within any community, be extremes, and you've got to ask the community to help you to deal with that extreme. So the fact that somebody holds these ultra-extreme views whilst being in Britain doesn't actually surprise me, because they're so prevalent in parts of Islam around the world. I mean, for heaven's sake, this abominable organisation is running Afghanistan effectively now, and indeed entering into huge drug trade and human slavery whilst they're about it. But I don't think that means that Muslims in Britain are here to take over, actually, at all. I think that the most worrying thing is the radicalisation of their children. I think a lot of them are here because they want to be in a more liberal country. And the hidden truth in this debate is I think many moderate Muslims would be appalled by what their own children are being taught.
Yes, but what's exceptionally worrying is how men like these guys get to the top of these organisations without the parents and other people inside those institutions going, actually, you're far too radical to be running the school.
There's just clearly not enough pushback. And maybe that's fear, because if these people wrap themselves in the cloak of being the voice on earth of Allah, right, and then they're asking people in the community to go and follow them, it's a very big ask for people in that community to then say, well, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I don't like you, because it is like offending, the kind of, like I said, the representative of your leader on earth, really, which I think is a... But I think, Joanna, I mean, for me, I think we need to be going into mosques and having a look at what's being said. But again, you probably get called Islamophobic for doing that.
Well, yeah, probably, to be honest. I think that might be a step too far to say that we should just be going into all mosques, because like we were saying before, you can't just kind of pinpoint. It's a bit like stop and search, isn't it? It's kind of racial profiling. So I think that one would be difficult. But I think that once somebody opens that door slightly, there should be something. And there's obviously organisations like Prevent, but it's because the law doesn't back it up. And actually, and it's hard to say, to be fair to them, but when it comes to the things that they do support and the support that they have given to the Taliban, they haven't said, we support terrorist activities. They're talking about being more liberal. So obviously it's going to be very difficult. It's scary to hear because it's the Taliban.
You don't have to intrude into a mosque and find out some secret meeting. You can start with the material that's been recorded and broadcast by people because they're proud of what they're saying. The campaign against anti-Semitism is trying to get the Metropolitan Police and the Crown Prosecution Service to prosecute people for things they've said on video and had broadcast. And so far our authorities show real reluctance to do that.
We are going to have to draw a line under it here and move on. But a Queen Mary University spokesperson said this: the event in September was not sponsored by the university, adding that it was jointly organised by Prosper Afghanistan and Human Aid and Advocacy. All right, well, it's quite a short statement there, considering what we heard, but there we are. Coming up, is Meghan really blocking Harry from making up with wills while his wife battles cancer? That is the claim of a prominent royal author. But the editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, reveals the truth shortly. But up next, as Keir Starmer declares his unshakable commitment to the nuclear deterrent while the government unveils a new drone-destroying defence laser beam, who do you trust more with the military, the Labour Party or the Tories? Former Labour MP Ivor Kaplan is ready to do battle with former Tory minister and current MP Paul Scully. Now, that's next. Batten down the hatches, though, because shots will be fired. This is Patrick Christys tonight. We're on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Cheryl Baker. Good morning, Cheryl.
Good morning.
When you think back to 1981, I mean, obviously the ABBA victory then wasn't all that long ago, 9 years earlier. Do you think they had a huge influence then on the sort of direction that Eurovision was taking?
Yeah, they did. They changed it completely. Because up to then, it had all been very staid and a bit posh, long frock, sticky bow ties, you know. And then they came along and they blew it out of the water. They looked so different. And they modernised it. And I think, yeah, it made a big change. Made a big change after that.
And we were watching your performance on Eurovision a little bit earlier on of making your mind up. I mean, you had so much fun, didn't you, up on that stage? Were you, in some part, inspired by ABBA?
Yes, I would say so. It was, ABBA was 74. I turned professional in 75 and did my first song for Europe, which was, you know, when they choose the British song to go forward. I did my first one in February 1976. So, yeah, it was only months after ABBA's performance that I started my own Eurovision journey. Yeah, they just changed the face of it. They changed the face of Eurovision. And if you look at what Eurovision is now, I think that all started with ABBA's performance. It made people think this is much more than just a song contest. It's all about the look. I mean, the clothes, they looked fantastic. And even the composer, or not the composer, what's he called? The conductor. He was dressed as Napoleon. It made it fun. Fantastic song, obviously, brilliant singing, but the whole look of it just changed the way that Eurovision is, and to this day.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Coming up, the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, gives her exclusive insight on Meghan Markle's refusal to reconcile with William and Kate unless they apologise. But first, who do you trust more with the military, Labour or the Tories? It's time now for our head-to-head. Well, in stark contrast to his predecessor, Keir Starmer has declared an unshakable commitment to the UK's nuclear weapons programme. The Labour leader also said he wants to raise defence spending to 2.5% of GDP as soon as resources allow. And during a visit to a nuclear submarine factory in Barrow, he reiterated his pledge to keep Britain safe.
Well, look, the commitment I made here today is really important. I think I'm the first Labour leader to come here to the shipyard here to see the building of the submarines for 30 years and to make a very important generational commitment.
But Defence Secretary Grant Shapps isn't buying it from a man who twice tried to get Jeremy Corbyn elected.
Now says, trust me on our Trident, on our nuclear deterrent, but he didn't even mention it in his own leadership election. The simple truth is you can't trust Labour on this.
And the government is now trying to boost its own defence credentials by announcing that a laser capable of shooting down enemy drones will be on Royal Navy warships by 2027. But who do you trust more with the military, Labour or the Tories? Let me know your thoughts, gbnews.com/your say, or tweet me at GB News, and while you're there, why not go and vote in our poll? The results to follow shortly. Doing battle on this now, I'm joined by Tory MP Paul Scully and former Labour Defence Minister Ivor Kaplan. Both of you, thank you very, very much. Paul, why can we trust the Tories more than Labour? You guys appear to have cut defence spending, left us woefully short.
No, look, we've got to make sure that we do maintain and indeed increase our defence spending. We've got to make sure that we do that for the threats that we actually face in the in the coming years. Hence, you've seen Dragonfire talked about today. What we can't do, though, is we can't have Keir Starmer, and as he said, he's rightly just said, he's the first leader to visit this, to talk about this for 30-odd years. You can't do that just as a tick box exercise, a single article in a newspaper, quick broadcast round, and then go away again thinking, he's ticked that box. This is something that we face day in, day out. We've had Labour backbenchers, the people behind Keir Starmer, whilst we remain fourth highest defence spender in the world, actually actively campaigning against, making careers campaigning against the deterrent, campaigning against pretty well every conflict the UK have been involved in over the last 30 or so years.
OK, I'll come back to you. Ivor, look, Keir Starmer actually doesn't mean what he says, does he? 2.5% when resources allow. Well, that could be never.
Well, I think that this is a very, very important moment for Keir Starmer, for the Labour Party. It shows the changes that the Labour Party has been through over the last 4.5 years. And maybe most importantly, this also says to Britain and to our international colleagues around the world that Britain will be there with our tridents whenever those are needed in any parts of the world. So I think this is a very important moment from a defence perspective. And the other side of this, Patrick, is how are we going to get the military to have more resources? Because it's not just the 2.5%. We actually need to, unfortunately, go back and look again at some of the people who've left the military when actually we need those people to come back and be part of the military operations that people around the world will expect from Britain. And
right, OK, look, I've got to put this to you, Paul. You know, the size of the UK armed forces has shrunk by more than 7,000 people in the year. It's now, I believe, at a record low. When I compare that to the last actual Labour government, so not what we could have had under Jeremy Corbyn, but what we did have under Tony Blair, defence spending remained at around 2.5% of GDP. I mean, the actual track record in our armed forces is remarkably better with Blair, isn't it?
Well, no, I think one thing, look, first of all, I would agree with Ivor that it is a moment, it's good that the Labour Party are actually acknowledging this because it's important for the country, regardless of party politics, that we do have the best approach to our own security and to those of our allies. Now, that's really important, I should say that. But look, I think what we had, when you look at what we had to inherit in 2010 wasn't just the financial crisis. It was some of the changes that were made to things like aircraft carrier purchases, these kind of things, under the Gordon Brown government that we had to pick up on. We have not just our armed forces, you have to bear in mind, it's not just about our armed forces. We have 400,000 people involved in the UK in the defence sector in terms of manufacture, procurement, and all of these things of our defence services as well. This is an amazing sector for us, as well as the security for our country.
Look, Ivor, let's break down what Keir Starmer said here. He said he's got the absolute bottle to press a button that, let's be honest, he's never going to be asked to press, that being the nuclear deterrent. He said that he'll only allow 2.5% if defence spending as GDP, if resources allow it. And he did try to get a man elected twice who wanted to do away with our nuclear deterrent. He's all mouth and no trousers, isn't he?
No, I can't go alongside that, I'm afraid, Patrick. Look, this constant thing by the Conservative Party about what happened under Corbyn is really just a mark away.
No, I'm sorry, Ivor, I've got to come in on that because actually that Keir Starmer, the current Labour leader, trying to get that man elected, he would have been happy to have had a government, been on the front bench, been in the cabinet with a man who wanted to do away with our nuclear deterrents. I mean, that is a fact.
Patrick, what happened in 17 and then 19 is the Labour Party went to the worst result since 1935.
Supported
it was never going to happen. It was never going to happen that Corbyn was going to win. What I'm saying is quite simply that over this last 4.5 years, Labour has had to relook at everything, and that includes the defence area, and that is part of what has happened today. And it's for what Paul just said. He's right that it's good for the country that both parties have a different, have a similar view But from our point of view, it's a very important moment, and I think Keir Starmer has done the right thing.
I just don't know if either I'll stick with you and then I'll give Paul the final word on this, because look at where the vast majority of the conflict zones are very likely to be. It's the Middle East. The Labour Party is so divided on the Middle East, OK? Are you really, as a Labour government, going to be able to make swift, decisive decisions when it comes to a potential Middle Eastern conflict? It would rip your party apart.
People said this to us in 1997, and it wasn't true. And I would say that won't happen when Labour is in government, if we're fortunate enough to win the general election whenever the Tories are capable enough of calling a general election.
OK, all right, and Paul, look, final word to you on this. You know, have the Tories been a bit outflanked by Keir here? You know, I think there was at least 2 or maybe even 3 front pages of the newspapers today that did have, you know, Keir doing his old military bit out there. We also look at some of the treatment of some members of the armed forces under the Tories, Paul. You know, really poor military accommodation that we've got going on there. You've had to lower the recruitment barriers. We did a story yesterday about people in the Royal Navy no longer being required to swim when they initially join. You can't even actually really entice people in, Paul.
No, I think, first of all, you can't just do all of this on a single day, or whether it's 3 or 4 or whatever headlines, frankly. You can't do this on a single day just after 30 years of inaction. From the Conservative Party's point of view, clearly there is more we need to do on defence. People aren't wanting to join the military for any number of reasons, unlike they used to do years ago. But look, Ivor talked about Jeremy Corbyn. That may have been a few years ago, but it was the last general election. It wasn't that long ago. And since then, trying to change the Labour Party, Keir Starmer has flip-flopped on any number of things. That's why you can't trust him just on this one single day.
All right, look, both of you, top stuff. Thank you very, very much. Really enjoyed that. Great content. So, who do you agree with? Who do you trust more on the military, the Tories or Labour? I'm really fascinated to hear what you have to say on this. So Janet on X says, none of them. There we go. None of them. They are not intelligent enough to be put in charge of dressing themselves, let alone weapons. Janet, all right. Barry on X says, the Tories have already turned the military woke, but Labour will completely ruin it and have the troops fighting while wearing a dress with pronoun badges. You guys are on form tonight. Lee says, I wouldn't trust either to pour water out of a bottle with the instructions on the bottom. All right, your verdict's in. 86% of you say you trust the Tories more with the military. 14% of you say that they trust Labour more. I think I should have put a don't know tag on that particular one. But anyway, coming up, well, most of Britain battles a cost of living crisis. Migrants like those on the Bibby Stockholm are being afforded all kinds of perks, including exclusive bus services and, get this, taxpayer-funded waterproof hiking gear. I will speak to a Weymouth resident who's had enough of being taken for a ride by our government. But first, as Harry and Meghan prepare to release a pair of make-or-break Netflix shows, The Difficult Duchess, is she actually stopping Wills and Harry from making up? The editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, gives her exclusive and unmissable insight on those incendiary claims. That's next.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Showers for many of us this weekend, but towards the southeast, something a little bit drier, and that's because we have high pressure dominating over the near continent. Further north, though, a frontal system is pushing its way through, and that's going to bring some further outbreaks of rain across some parts of Scotland into northern England as we go through the night. Also, some strong gusty winds and a few showers towards the northwest of Scotland, but elsewhere, largely dry as we go through the early hours of Saturday morning, and some clear skies, but despite these, temperatures not dropping a huge amount. A touch cooler than last night, but a relatively mild start on Saturday nonetheless. First thing, there could be some murkiness, some low cloud perhaps around English Channel coastal parts, but otherwise, particularly towards the southeast, it's going to be a largely fine day. Decent amount of sunshine, a bit more cloud and some rain across northern and western parts of England and Wales. Nothing heavy here. The heaviest downpours likely across parts of Scotland. Could be some gusty winds here too. Temperatures will be down a nudge compared to today, but still a little bit above average for the time of year. Into Sunday, and it is going to be a fresher day for all of us. There will be plenty of showers piling in across parts of Northern Ireland and particularly Scotland. Some heavy, some thundery, could be some hail mixed in. Further south and east across the bulk of England and Wales, it's actually looking like a largely dry day with some decent sunshine. More showers to come as we go through Monday and to Tuesday, but it is going to be noticeably fresher than it has been of late. Bye-bye.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
the perception of a crime being committed is not based on whether that person intended to commit a crime or not, but whether the victim, in inverted commas, or anybody else for that matter who happened to hear whatever was said, determines that it was motivated by malice or ill will. Most of these things come out in heated exchanges or in, very casual exchanges. And then somebody says, oh, I'm offended or I'm hurt or I'm whatever because this was clearly malicious and it's against me as a black person or a transgender or sexuality, whatever it might be. And somebody says, I perceive this to be motivated by hate. Now, at that point, what is the reasonable test that anybody could apply as to what was in somebody's mind at the time? You don't know what I'm thinking now. I don't know what you're thinking now. Why is it that a crime can be committed on the basis of what somebody is alleged to be thinking?
Well, that's also how discrimination often works, because people have worked out these days that saying something or sending an email like one I received some years ago that said, let's go round her place with pickaxe handles and balaclavas and see what we can do. Now, that's an email that was sent about me. People have worked out that you don't do that. But from the circumstance of what happens, if racial taunts were being shouted, if taunts about someone's protected characteristic were being shouted in the run-up to what then happened, it would be pretty obvious that that was a hate crime.
But we know, for example, that street preachers have been arrested merely for quoting the Bible and without actually intending, anything beyond that.
This is Patrick Christys tonight on GB News. Coming up, I speak to a Portland resident about the luxury bus and other unbelievable taxpayer-funded perks afforded to the Bibby Stockholm migrants as the rest of the locals suffer through a cost of living crisis. But it is time now for the Royal Dispatch. And as the Princess of Wales continues her treatment for cancer, an ultimatum has reportedly come down the pipeline from the ever-caring Sussexes. Now, royal author Tom Quinn has revealed that William and Kate are apparently making efforts to mend the rift, and they're keen for a reconciliation. But Meghan is refusing to bury the hatchet unless they do two things. Speaking to the Mirror, Mr Quinn said Harry would like a reconciliation, but supports his wife completely, and until she feels that the royal family have sufficiently apologised, it's not going to happen. Right, well, I'm joined now by the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. Charlotte, thank you very, very much. Is Meghan really getting in the way, do you think, of a reconciliation between Harry and William?
I think she is pushing for an apology, and I think that's been going on for quite a long time, although there have been reports from the Sussex camp that she's sort of given up on the apology. But I don't think she's actually blocking him from seeing his family and reconciling with his family. We know that, obviously, he came over to see his dad when his dad was diagnosed with cancer, and he's coming over again in May, although I have to say she's not coming with him. He's coming over to St Paul's for an Invictus Games event. And it's kind of surprising she's not coming with him. It feels like a withdrawal of support, but I think maybe she's just protecting herself because she knows she's not very popular in this country. I think Tom might be pushing the boundaries to say that she's preventing an olive branch, to be honest.
I mean, I'm not really sure that William wants an olive branch, does he?
No, I mean, certainly that is true. The idea that William is looking for a reconciliation is for the birds. I mean, this is a guy with a lot of bigger things on his plate. I mean, he's got two very sick relatives, one of whom's his wife. He's planning to be the future king, who knows how long that could be. I have to say, Charles is responding really well to cancer treatment. But that must be at the forefront of his mind. He could be the king the next few years. And the idea that he's going to get bogged down by more psychodrama from his brother, from Montecito, from Meghan, apologies. I mean, he's moved past all of that. He's actually past the angry stage, I'm hearing. He's just in the can't be bothered with those guys stage.
Yeah, no, indeed. I know a lot of people feel that way, certainly. You did say a little line there, which is that you think the king is responding well to cancer treatment.
Yeah, no, I am hearing that he's actually responding genuinely really well to cancer treatment, and everyone in the royal household is feeling really positive and upbeat about how he's responding, yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that is great to know, great to know. Now, obviously, they're also going to be releasing a new two-part Netflix series that I think is a make-or-break moment in their careers after they announced those two new shows. The first series will be curated by Meghan, apparently the first episode, and celebrate the joys of cooking, gardening, entertaining and friendship, while the second episode focuses on the rarefied world of polo, a sport loved by Harry. I mean, does this have mass appeal?
Well, let's face it, polo does not have mass appeal. So to play polo, you have to have 4 polo ponies, not 1, 4. So how many people in the world could own 4 polo ponies and a groom? And, you know, it's the sport of kings. So it's a pretty niche market. We've got to face that. And the most interesting thing about polo is all the drama that goes on behind the scenes. Everyone gets drunk. You know, we know from Jilly Cooper that their polo players are... They play away. They're rampant. That's a good way of putting it. But let's face it, that's not going to be in Harry's programme, because he's going to do the sort of very polished, you know, very earnest face of polo, if such a thing exists. And meanwhile, the gardening show, I mean, it just feels a bit granny-ish for me. You know, it's gardening and friendship, and it's quite tame fare. And the idea that they're not trading on their royal connections for this is also for the birds, because although they're not directly slagging off the royal family like they were in their last Netflix show, you know, who would possibly tune into a programme about Meghan Markle cooking if it wasn't for the fact she'd married into the royal family? And I've actually seen there's something circulating online. There's her last cookery show was her cooking toast. She cooked toast.
She cooked toast.
About 5 years ago, she revealed her recipe for toast, which has got ricotta on it and her granny's favourite jam.
Right.
I watched that, and it was a little bit like watching paint dry, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
So she hasn't got great form for cookery shows so far.
I mean, I think her and Brooklyn Beckham should probably be locked in a room together and just made to create even more.
I was going to say, I think it's going to be the next Brooklyn Beckham. I think it's going to be really cringe, you know. She's not a passionate cook. I know she's fond of cooking and it's a hobby, but she's not known to be a passionate cook.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, look, Meghan's brand, when it comes to cooking and it comes to gardening and stuff, is that really what moves the dial? Or is this an attempt to try to soften her, to show her as being something other than maybe the kind of person who, frankly, was very offensive about the royal family? You know, the curtsy to the Queen moment, we played that a bit earlier on in the show. Quite disrespectful.
I think you're so right. I think she's definitely trying to soften herself down. I personally am not convinced when I do see clips of Meghan doing that kind of cookery act. Do you remember when she wrote the words on the bananas a few years ago? Yeah. And there have been times she came over to the UK and she did a cookery book for Grenfell, which was a really good cause, but I personally just didn't buy into it. I didn't buy into this soft and gentle Meghan. We know she's hard as nails, and she's ambitious, and she's ruthless. And, you know, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but she isn't softly gentle Meghan, I don't think.
No, not at all. But we've spoken a bit there about whether or not there's going to be a reconciliation with the royal family. We've spoken about these 2 new Netflix series which are going to be coming out at some point in the future. But there's actually a move, genuinely it appears, towards politics now as well with these 2. So the Sussexes are preparing to wade into US politics ahead of the monumental election this year. That's because the pair's Archwell Foundation have launched a campaign to fight against misinformation during the election. So according to reports, the couple are working to prepare US voters for a possible deep fake onslaught. All right, Charlotte, I mean, how are they going to do this? What actually is their plan?
There's a sort of consortium of bipartisan campaigners who have got together, and they're going to help stop the spread of disinformation, including deepfakes. We don't really know how they're going to do that yet. But we know that in the past, how Meghan tackles disinformation is she has a good old grumble about it. So while she worked for Spotify, who we now know have dumped her, she moaned about Spotify while she was actually, like, working for them and getting paid a huge fortune. So she was biting the hand that fed her. But she moaned that they were spreading disinformation about COVID jabs at the time. So that's probably what she'll do. She'll just release a few moany public statements like she did last time. As far as I can tell, she hasn't really released any other details other than she's going to complain.
But that's the theme, isn't it, really? Saying a lot of stuff without saying a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think this is paving the way for her own political career, potentially, or not?
Do you know, I think gone are the days. There was a moment where she hired Michelle Obama's PR woman and spent $90,000 via Archwell to pay for her. And we did think at the time, God, maybe she actually is going to run for president. But now I just feel like that moment's passed. You know, now she's making cookery shows and shows about gardening. Everything just seems so much more toned down about Meghan now. Like, the moment, maybe, dare I say it, has passed for Meghan Markle. I can't see her getting that involved in politics anymore.
No. All right. Well, look, Charlotte, thank you very, very much. It's been fantastic to get you on and cover such a wide range of topics there as well. Charlotte Griffiths, editor-at-large at The Mail on Sunday. Now, look, coming up, remember when Angela Rayner said this about Boris Johnson?
So it seems, Mr. Speaker, potential criminality has been found in Downing Street.
Well, will Ms Rayner live by her own lofty standards and resign now that the police are investigating her over the sale of her council house and the electoral roll issue? I'll give my no-holds-barred take at 10, plus I'll show you what on earth is happening here. But next, Portland residents are up in arms as it's revealed the Bibby Stockholm migrants are being given an exclusive luxury bus service and even taxpayer-funded waterproof clobber. So, when will our government put local residents first and close the bottomless pit of money given to asylum seekers? I take you to Weymouth to speak to resident Kate Robson next. And let me tell you, she's not happy. Stay tuned.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Offline and overlooked. That's what Age UK say millions of British pensioners are. Why? Because they cannot or won't access the internet. It's leading to digital exclusion. So the charities campaigning for public services like banks, utilities and even the NHS to maintain a more human approach.
Everything's online. People assume you've got a smartphone with a mobile number and an email, and without that you don't exist in this world anymore. We've got to try and get the government to see that it's so important to make people feel that they belong, because there's a feeling that the older generation just feel that they're forgotten, they're in the way, and we already know that anyway, but it's just another reason for them to feel that they're not wanted. They'll just accept it and they'll say, well, that's it, I can't do it anymore, and that's it, whereas other people would be really kicking and screaming. So we need to be the voice for older people.
Despite digital technology playing an increasing role in our lives, around 1 in 5 over 65s in the UK don't use the internet. Thornycroft Centre in Pontefract, West Yorkshire provides a space for this age group to socialise and get help to go online.
I'm not that good with mobiles, so when you mention anything about online, I ain't a clue what you're talking about.
The closure of thousands of banks is also detrimental to the older generation.
A lot of our members what come, they tend to use cash. They don't like to use bank cards. I think a lot of it's trust or the lack of knowledge. They don't understand how it works. I think they're very vulnerable as well with online. It's really important that they're aware how to use it and how to use it safely.
So, in an online era, it's still crucial for many to have an offline option.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Coming up, I explain why Angela Rayner is a hypocrite if she doesn't resign after police launched an investigation into her. But first, to a fresh blow to the increasingly farcical Rwanda plan. Now, leaked documents have revealed that a shortage of lawyers, yep, don't spit your coffee out, a shortage of lawyers, could limit deportations to the African country. Officials have warned ministers that the amount of taxpayer-funded legal advice the government is obliged to provide to migrants could be a major constraining factor, and as many as an extra 350 duty solicitors funded by legal aid, that's you, could be needed. Each migrant being deported to Rwanda will also require 3 minders, reducing the number of asylum seekers on any one flight to fewer than 50. That's according to documents from last year. Well, this discouraging news probably means the migrants on the Bibby Stockholm barge won't be leaving anytime soon. And Portland locals are outraged at the, quote, special services being provided to those migrants, including free exclusive luxury bus services and free waterproof hiking gear. Again, it's all coming out of the taxpayer's pocket. Well, I'm very pleased to say I'm joined now by one of those rightfully aggrieved locals. It's Kate Robson. Kate, thank you very, very much.
Hiya.
Can you just explain to me then what the mood is like with locals like yourself when you see some of the special services being put on to the people in the Bibby Stockholm?
I've got to be honest, the special services don't actually bother me so much. It is the cost and the indulgence. I mean, we're talking about a small community on Portland, 13,500. You know, Portland Port is a private port. And I think what is most sickening to most people in this community is the fact that we are the only town community to agree to hold a barge. And that is because it's lucrative. We know it's lucrative. I mean, the package that has been thrown at this barge is absolutely astonishing. We worked out over 18 months and, you know, we were told as a taxpayer this was better value. And I mean, and it's we still didn't want it. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we've got poor access to services already, but all of a sudden there's £34.8 million and a barge floated in that I think actually Portland Port, they thought they'd float in and nobody would actually notice.
Could you just explain to me a bit about that, the discrepancy, Kate, if that's OK, between, you know, you guys struggling to access certain services and maybe some people on the barge not really struggling that much?
Well, no, it's pure indulgence. So really, I mean, it's supposed to be a deterrent, a bit like Rwanda, when in fact, you know, it's coming across as a holiday camp on the Jurassic Coast. You know, nice area, South Dorset. There's cricket, there's football. There are any amount of supporters that are giving men lifts to places. They are enjoying the nightlife of Weymouth. They certainly don't appear to be particularly, as you would class, a typical refugee, as it were. And these luxury buses, I mean, Portland Port is secure, so they are not allowed to walk off the port. It's, you know, it's got a history steeped in maritime and MOD. I think nuclear subs still visit. Normally, you know, they're most renowned as well for cruise ships, but they have to get a bus out of the port, but they run twice an hour. We're not talking a shuttle bus or a little old bus that, you know, the school kids get on. They're brand new Excelsior coaches, and they are running twice an hour with mainly normally about 2 people on. So I dread to think what the cost is to the taxpayer just to the buses, but an FOI went into the Home Office and it came back as not in the public interest. Now, we know
classic.
that very convenient. You know, we've seen complaints from, you know, the older generation stood at the bus stops in the rain with empty buses going past them. I mean, it's an absolute kick in the teeth. When you look as well at this Bibby Stockholm, it was originally designed for, I think, for 506, so they doubled the capacity. I have no idea how much it cost to refit this thing. I'm sure that was a huge amount, and I know the Home Office are trying to blame some of the initial costs on that, but that's done. There's now, I think, about 320 men on board. They've upped the actual capacity to, I believe, 420 or 30. And if you break that down over 18 months of the contract, that's £4,500 per head.
Yeah, it's shocking.
It's disgusting. I mean,
and I think they get medical. They get kind of on-demand medical care as well, which frankly a load of people would absolutely kill for in this country at the minute. Let's be honest with the way that the GP surgeries are, etc. You mentioned that they were enjoying the nightlife as well. I mean, I can't help but wonder who's paying for that.
Well, I'm not sure, but we're having some mass baptisms here as well. I've heard apparently there was 20 baptised on Weymouth Beach last week. So whether that's I don't know, a pray to stay or perhaps a rationale to drink alcohol, I'm not sure.
No, so you're hearing of mass baptisms. Obviously, we can't confirm this now. We'll look into it, though. Good grief! But you're hearing of mass baptism. You said 20 of them were baptised off the coast last week.
Apparently so. We know 6 were baptised a few weeks ago, but I've heard from a reliable source today that there was a mass baptism on Weymouth Beach, and Weymouth Baptist Church are justifying this. This has been covered before, I know, but it is just an absolute farce. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable, the level of support that some locals are going to support them, but at the same time appear to be completely ignorant to the struggles that the communities have. And I think particularly because Portland Port is owned by Langham Industries, they're renowned for, they own a vineyard, for example. They're very, very careful to not be aligned with this. They want this completely separate. It's like a dirty little secret. It's like from, cruise ships to vineyards to prison barges. But we know what is paying the most money. I mean, this is absolutely shambolic. And it's the same as the Rwanda scheme. I mean, the Home Office, it was running as a company. It'll be closed down. I mean, it's corruption beyond belief.
Well, Kate, can I thank you very, very much? I mean, we've managed to cover a heck of a lot of it, including what I think might have been quite a large exclusive, which we will look into here, Kate. So you've definitely put your best foot forward tonight. I'll have to talk to you again very, very soon. But guys, Kate, we are bang out of time, I'm afraid. Kate Robson there from Weymouth. Right, look, in a statement, the Home Office said this: "We have always been clear that the use of asylum hotels is unacceptable, and that's why we acted swiftly to reduce the impact on local communities by moving asylum seekers onto barges and former military sites. While the National Audit Office figures include set-up costs, it's currently better value for money for the taxpayer to continue with these sites than to use hotels." We will be looking into that 20 asylum seeker baptism that allegedly took place off the coast of Weymouth. An old classic if it's true. Coming up, as a disabled man comes out of a heatwave hibernation to sue the government over climate change, I'm sorry, but should that even be allowed? And up next, why Angela Rayner has got to go.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Showers for many of us this weekend, but towards the southeast, something a little bit drier, and that's because we have high pressure dominating over the near continent. Further north, though, a frontal system is pushing its way through, and that's going to bring some further outbreaks of rain across some parts of Scotland into northern England as we go through the night. Also, some strong gusty winds and a few showers towards the northwest of Scotland, but elsewhere largely dry as we go through the early hours of Saturday morning, and some clear skies, but despite these, temperatures not dropping a huge amount. A touch cooler than last night, but a relatively mild start on Saturday nonetheless. First thing, there could be some murkiness, some low cloud perhaps around English Channel coastal parts, but otherwise, particularly towards the southeast, it's going to be a largely fine day. Decent amount of sunshine, a bit more cloud and some rain across northern and western parts of England and Wales. Nothing heavy here. The heaviest downpours likely across parts of Scotland. Could be some gusty winds here too. Temperatures will be down a nudge compared to today, but still a little bit above average for the time of year. Into Sunday, and it is going to be a fresher day for all of us. There will be plenty of showers piling in across parts of Northern Ireland and particularly Scotland. Some heavy, some thundery, could be some hail mixed in. Further south and east across the bulk of England and Wales, it's actually looking like a largely dry day with some decent sunshine. More showers to come as we go through Monday and to Tuesday, but it is going to be noticeably fresher than it has been of late. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is your chance to win our biggest prize of the year so far. First, there's a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash for you to spend this summer. Then, we want to send you on a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. Thanks to Variety Cruises, you'll be able to choose from any of their 2025 Greek adventures and discover Greece like never before. And with flights, meals, drinks and excursions included, all you have to do is relax. We'll also give you these terrific travel treats. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive?
Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
I'm satisfied with the answers that she has given repeatedly now on this. She will cooperate with the investigation as you would expect.
Well, hang on a minute.
So it seems, Mr. Speaker, potential criminality has been found in Downing Street.
Is Angela Rayner a hypocrite who has to go? And find out the bonkers reason a man is suing the government. Also,
I have often said that our diversity is our greatest strength. Our diversity is our greatest strength.
The case for diversity has just been shattered. And have you seen this? I've got tomorrow's newspapers tonight with Tory Alex Dean, commentator Alex Armstrong and Apprentice finalist Joanna Jarju and... Get ready, Britain. Here we go. I know who Labour want to replace Angela Rayner with. Next.
Patrick, thank you. The top stories this hour. Angela Rayner says she'll step down if it's determined that she's committed a criminal offence over her tax affairs. It's over the sale of her council house in Stockport a decade ago. Questions have been asked about whether she paid the right amount of tax and if it was her main home. In a statement, she said the questions raised relate to a time before she was an MP and that she's taken expert tax and legal advice. Sir Keir Starmer says the investigation will reveal the facts.
We welcome this investigation because it will allow a line to be drawn in relation to this matter. I am fully confident that Angela Rayner has not broken the rules. She will cooperate with the investigation as you would expect, and it's really a matter for the police.
The former chief executive of Royal Mail says he doesn't know if money paid by sub-postmasters who were wrongly accused of stealing was recorded as profit. Adam Crozier told the Horizon IT inquiry this afternoon that he assumed the money was accounted for by the company's financial team, but he admitted that he couldn't be sure. He also said he was not aware that lawyers within the Royal Mail group conducted prosecutions, and he conceded that sub-postmasters shouldn't have been treated as thieves. A man who attacked and killed another man with a serrated hunting knife in a Cornwall nightclub has been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 23 years. Jake Hill also injured 4 others in just 20 seconds outside the Eclipse nightclub, causing fatal wounds to 32-year-old Michael Ridio-Allen, who intervened to protect others. The judge praised the victim's bravery, calling him a man of exceptional qualities. 22-year-old Tia Taylor also received a 3-year sentence for manslaughter, and 23-year-old Chelsea Powell was jailed for 15 months for perverting the course of justice. There are serious shortcomings in the Bank of England's economic forecasting methods, according to a report by former chair of the US Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke. It found staff were using out-of-date software with functions that could be automated, often performed manually. It comes after several of the bank's forecasts were repeatedly inaccurate during a period of economic turbulence. And social media giant Meta is under fire for lowering the minimum age for WhatsApp from 16 to 13. Campaigners say the move is tone-deaf and irresponsible. However, Meta says the change brings the app's age limit in line with most countries, and they say protections are in place. It comes as the tech firm, which also owns Facebook and Instagram, unveiled a range of new safety features, including an automatic blurring feature on what's described as intimate images. That filter will be on default for those aged under 18. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's over to Patrick.
Angela Rayner and Sir Keir Starmer stand accused of being massive hypocrites. Angela Rayner is now officially under investigation by Greater Manchester Police over the sale of her council house and an alleged breach of electoral law. She denies all wrongdoing and she may well be exonerated by the police. But that's not the point. This is. She said a serving Prime Minister should resign when Boris Johnson was under investigation. She didn't wait for the outcome. She said it more than once. She put this tweet up: Boris Johnson's Downing Street is under police investigation. How on earth can he think he can stay on as Prime Minister? And attached to that tweet was this video of what she said in the comments.
Now there's a police investigation and the terms of reference for Sue Gray set by the Prime Minister himself are clear. If any evidence emerges of behaviour that is potentially a criminal offence, the matter will be referred to the police. So it seems, Mr. Speaker, potential criminality has been found in Downing Street.
And the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has been at it too. He tweeted, "Honesty and decency matter. After months of denials, the Prime Minister is now under criminal investigations for breaking his own lockdown laws. He needs to do the decent thing and resign." And he said this in Parliament.
Prime Minister himself is now subject to criminal investigation. The Prime Minister took us all for fools. I can't tell you how many times people have said to me that this Prime Minister's lack of integrity is somehow priced in, that his behaviour and character don't matter. I have never accepted that. The Prime Minister should do the decent thing and resign. Continuing his leadership will mean further misconduct, cover-up and deceit.
Sir Keir Starmer mentions defending the indefensible in a longer version of that clip as well. He said that Miss Rayner has done nothing wrong, but he's refused to look at the evidence. He sent Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy out to say rubbish like this.
Look, I think there's a different arrangement and expectation for the Prime Minister than there is in this context. Okay.
Well, Mr Lammy, it certainly does seem that there's a different standard. Let's remind ourselves of Ms Rayner's tweet again, shall we? There we go. Boris Johnson's Downing Street is under police investigation. How on earth can he think he can stay on as Prime Minister? And today's statement from Greater Manchester Police: we are investigating whether any offences have been committed. This follows a reassessment of information provided to us by Mr Daly. Well, I've been told that Labour are already lining up Bridget Phillipson, the Shadow Education Minister, to take over from Miss Rayner. By Angela Rayner's own standards, she has to go. By Keir Starmer's own standards, she has to go. The replacement is waiting in the wings. Well, come on, get on with it then. Well, I'm joined now by former Education Minister Andrea Jenkins. Look, Andrea, this does appear to me to be a question of hypocrisy, especially given what was said about Boris Johnson, who you are a massive fan of.
Complete hypocrisy, Patrick. And one thing the British public can't stand is the do as I say, not as I do attitude. They like fairness. And, you know, come on, Angela, you've called out Boris and been so blatant about that. You mentioned Sue Gray in the clip, didn't she? Who went on to, let's not forget, she went on to become an advisor for Starmer. So come on, put your money where your mouth is and resign. And one thing that I can't stand as well, Patrick, is how it didn't have to go to the police investigating this. Come clean, publish your what you've been advised, your tax advice. Then we want you to put taxpayers' money on this.
The real line today, Andrea, is this is a witch hunt. This is a working class woman, and this is why everyone's getting on their high horse about it. How would you respond to that?
For God's sake, it's Codswallop. I'm a working class woman. You know, she needs to get a bit more grit there, doesn't she? I mean, and it's when it suits them. This is a woman who called people in my party scum. So that's acceptable, is it? No, it's not, Angela. So resign. Although, to be honest, she's great for the Conservative Party. So actually thinking about it, stay there.
Well, I suppose there is an argument that maybe the longer that she is in post, the best the Labour Party, the best the Tory Party might do. What she said is, she said that she will resign if there is found to be any criminality. She denies any and all wrongdoing. She may well end up being completely exonerated, of course. But is that a different standard that she's setting now than she set for Boris Johnson and other people? She didn't want to allow them to wait and see if they actually had done anything wrong. Just the very fact they were under police investigation was enough for her to call for them to resign, wasn't it?
Completely. And look at what Lammy said this week in that awful interview, which was embarrassing, saying there's different principles unless you're the party of government. I mean, that is appalling behaviour. And, I mean, to me as well, the fact that Labour have not let her be on the airwaves now for 2 weeks, what does that say? The Labour Party has not got confidence in Angela Rayner. And you're right, Patrick. They are waiting to replace her. So, yeah, it's good for the Tories have been there, but we cannot stand hypocrisy. Angela Rayner, just go.
Well, it's an open secret, in my view anyway, about who they want to replace her. And, I wonder whether or not they will just get on with it. Andrea, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show. That is former Education Minister there, Dame Andrea Jenkins. Let's get the thoughts of my panel now. I've got Conservative parliamentary candidate Alex Dean, I've got entrepreneur and social commentator Joanna Jarju, and I've got political commentator Alex Armstrong. Joanna, I'll start with you on this. Look, it's hypocrisy, isn't it? If she hadn't have made a rod for her own back, we could await the outcome of a police investigation, but she, by her own standards and by Keir Starmer's own standards, has to go, doesn't she?
No, I don't think she does at all, and I think it's a completely different situation to what we saw with Boris. With Boris, the whole nation watched with their own eyes, saw pictures come out, saw various different things, and I think that Boris, like David Lammy said, has to be held to a higher standard. But I think that this has
Boris
Prime
the
Minister.
He wants to be the Deputy Prime Minister of this country.
Yeah, but he was Prime Minister at the time, and this was something that happened at Number 10.
You're shaking your head furiously.
No, come on. We can't have moral standards for one group of people and a different for other. That just leads into a very, very dangerous society. Angela Rayner is the ultimate hypocrite. She's the ultimate political hypocrite, not just because of saying as soon as Boris came under investigation, he wasn't proven guilty at that point, let's bear in mind, that he should resign. By her own standards, she should resign too. But she's also the woman that benefited from right to buy, but also wants to get rid of right to buy for people who want to buy their council homes. So she spills out this constant hypocrisy. It's one rule for Angela, a different for everyone else.
It's completely different, sorry.
Well, Alex, I'll get your views on this. I mean, it's also a problem for Keir Starmer. I mean, Keir Starmer, we heard a clip from him there in the House of Commons talking about decency and ethics in politics. He was quite toe-curling, actually. He said, come on, Boris has got to go. Well, hang on a minute. He's now standing alongside a woman. She's got fake tax inspectors following her around in the street wherever she goes.
No.
Now the police are investigating.
Just pragmatically, stories run this long, the person tends to go. But I believe in the presumption of innocence, which she's entitled to. But that is something rather more than the Labour Party does when they talk about other people. And that's the point to me, that they have undermined that principle. And Keir Starmer, as the former Director of Public Prosecutions, should have known better than to do that. But he did call for the Prime Minister to go once he was being investigated by the police. And so for the person who wants to be Deputy Prime Minister to have the same test seems to me to be quite right, especially as she was the attack dog against Boris and co. It was Angela Rayner herself who, as she proudly said in Parliament, called for the Prime Minister to go once the police started to investigate. Well, the police are investigating her now. I don't think that means you should have to resign, because I believe in the presumption of innocence.
But you didn't set those standards.
But she doesn't. Now, I want to make one other point too. People get confused over what's happening. This is not actually the suggestion about tax. She may have another set of allegations to deal with later. This is about electoral issues. And so that's what the point is. And whether she misled people about her residence could be quite a serious issue, actually, particularly for a politician, given how important the defence of our electoral system is. But these are are allegations. She's entitled to make a denial, and she's made it. I'll just make one point. The one thing I can tell you is definitely untrue is Keir Starmer saying, I welcome this investigation. That is a whopper.
Do you know what? I actually disagree with you, Alex, because, you know, Angela Rayner is the lovey of the far left in the Labour Party. She was installed there by Momentum. She's the inherent... Oh, the Momentum group in the Labour Party are going to be absolutely appalled by this news. And I think Keir Starmer would happily see the back of Angela Rayner, who'll be scratching at the doors of 10 Downing Street as soon as he's in power.
He did try to demote her, I remember, before he wound up promoting her.
Yeah.
But don't you think that this whole thing actually is classist? Because I think that when it's been Tory ministers that have done something, I feel like it's a lot more kind of...
Well, I don't think so. I thought that Will Wragg should have resigned immediately. I don't know why he's still a member of Parliament. I thought that it was completely wrong of Angela Rayner to go around calling Tories scum and now asks for public sympathy and the benefit of the doubt. Extraordinary.
Well,
but that's not about class.
Why is it classist, then? Why is it classist?
I think it's classist because I actually think Angela Rayner is the perfect example of social mobility in this country. And because her living arrangements aren't kind of to par with what Tory ministers and the Conservative Party see as the nuclear kind of family in the UK, I feel as if they're picking that apart.
Whether or not she's lied on the electoral roll.
No, but I think that even the question to begin with and probing this, I feel as if the Conservative Party...
You don't think people should be able to ask? The point is, remember she said... if once you've lied to the British public, all bets are off for our democracy. And she said that about the Prime Minister, but she wants to be Deputy Prime Minister. Well, the point is, allegations are now being made that she has lied, and her test was that if the police investigate you, if you're in high office, then you should resign. I don't believe that.
No, but I think that, can I just clarify what she was saying about Boris Johnson? I think that it was partly about the investigation, but also because he was making rules within Number 10, that Number 10 was under investigation as well. And I think that that's what kind of ups the ante when it comes to whether he should resign or not.
I'm going to read out Angela Rayner's latest statement, OK? Now, I'll just get a bit of comment off the back of it. So Angela Rayner said this. I've repeatedly said I would welcome the chance to sit down with the appropriate authorities, including the police and HMRC, to set out the facts and draw a line under this matter. I am completely confident I've followed the rules at all times. I've always said that integrity and accountability are important in politics. That's why it's important that this is urgently looked at independently and without political interference. I make no apologies for having held Conservative ministers to account in the past. Indeed, the public would rightly expect me to do so as the Deputy Leader of the Opposition. We've seen the Tory party use this playbook before, reporting political opponents to the police during election campaigns to distract from their record. I will say, as I did before, if I committed a criminal offence, I would, of course, do the right thing and step down. The British public deserves politicians who know the rules apply to them. The questions raised relate to a time before I was an MP, and I have set out my family's circumstances and taken expert tax and legal advice. I look forward to setting out the facts with the relevant authorities at the earliest possible opportunity.
That is a different test to the one that she asked for before. The test that she asked for before was that if you were investigated by the police, it wasn't just her, Keir Starmer said this too, if the police investigate you, then you should resign. That's what they said of the last iteration of the Conservative government. It's not what I think, but that's what they said.
Yeah, this is it. No, none of us are saying, realistically, that she absolutely has to go based around the fact there's been an investigation. She's said it. Keir Starmer's said it. And that's the problem, really.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with holding ministers to account. That's the whole job of the opposition, frankly. Yeah. But you can't then throw the rule book and say, no, I have set new standards now when it comes to you. Yeah. As Andrea Jenkins perfectly said, the British public do not like rules for you and rules for me.
Final comment to Joanna.
That's classist. That's real classism.
Look, how big a problem do you actually think it is for Keir Starmer?
I think it's a complete storm in a teacup. I think that when you compare it to other people like Nadhim Zahawi, who ended up, basically evading tax that was over £3 million that he had to pay back to HMRC, I think it's completely different. And the British public, when they're looking at this, actually are looking at Angela Rayner 15 years ago and thinking, that could have been me. She was living a mile away from her husband. She's got a disabled child.
Right, but do you think it's a big problem for Keir Starmer if he goes, also just want to point out Nadhim Zahawi, he's not here to defend himself. So do you think it's a big problem if she goes?
No, I don't think that it's a bit... Well, it could be, actually, to an extent, because I think that Angela Rayner is really popular within the Labour Party.
Exactly.
And I think she represents a lot of other people as well.
And it does come off the back of The Guardian's front page today, which was all about Labour potentially losing in some urban areas, left-wing areas. Be interesting to see whether or not she would cause Starmer any headaches. Look, coming up, as damning research blows the lid off the claim that diversity boosts profits, Should businesses re-embrace just good old-fashioned meritocracy? We'll debate that when I deliver the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. And next, as a man comes out of heatwave hibernation to sue the government over climate change, has a dangerous precedent now been set? I debate with Climate Party leader Ed Gemmell. You will not believe what one bloke is taking the government to court for. Stay tuned.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
I wonder, is this the fundamental distinction we need to make between Islam, which is a private religion people may practice freely amongst themselves, and Islamism, when you try and place those values upon other people, place that way of being, force it on people who don't want it?
Tom, I have been very much clear about this thing, that Islam is a religion and people are free to follow that religion in the UK, in a free Western society. So we have no problem with people following their religion as long as it is not being imposed onto the wider society. And when you talk about drawing a distinction between Islam and Islamism, people like me, you and me, we are drawing that distinction. We're trying to maintain that distinction. But if you look at the commentator from the Muslim community, some commentator, they would like to blur this line and they would ask you, what is Islamism? Where does it exist? Sorry, it does exist. We see it. And the teacher, this incident is an epitome of that kind of, ideology being prevalent, in our society.
Khadija, do you worry that these views are typical for some sections of society? Do you think that there's a problem with some Muslim men, that they have perhaps views that we don't consider to be British values?
There are certain readings of religion which are misogynistic, which are discriminatory, which are homophobic. We need to be honest about it. We need to be calling it out whenever we hear these kind of views. It's been a long time that we are letting these kind of ideologies crawling in, spreading tentacles in British society, and we are just ignoring it in the name of respecting people's culture and religion. You are not suppressed in the UK.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Absolutely bonkers story, this, but it could affect all of us. So after a group of Swiss geriatrics, alongside Greta Thunberg, convinced the ECHR that their government had breached their human rights by failing to protect them from climate change, a dangerous precedent has been set. A precedent that could have far-reaching consequences, including on these shores. Now, this is the latest development, OK? That's exactly what Doug Paulley, who is a 46-year-old disability rights campaigner, is hoping. Paulley, who suffers from diabetes, nerve damage and a heart condition that meant that he apparently hibernates during heat waves, is also now suing our government over the weather. So his legal challenge is this: along with Friends of the Earth and a man who lost his home to coastal erosion, it will be heard at the High Court in June, where they will argue the government isn't doing enough to tackle climate change. So where does this madness end? Well, I'm joined now by the leader of the Climate Party, Ed Gemmell. Ed, with respect, why should the government be sued by a man who has a variety of different issues that the climate may or may not affect? Why should we all be giving this guy a payout?
I think to begin with, I mean, we've got to look at the fact that everybody has a right to protection. We should be looking after everybody, and we have a National Health Service to look after everybody anyway. That's a duty of care that governments have. Under the European Convention on Human Rights, of course, they have a very specific duty of care to deal with these things. So they must be doing it. Now, whether or not this case will get through and whether or not the government will be found to be liable for it remains to be seen. But I think that in the sort of balance of evidence on that, you've got to look at whether the government is actually doing enough. I mean, there has already been a challenge to the government, let's go back 2 years, by Client Earth, where they brought a challenge in the High Court, which was saying we don't have plans which are credible in order to get us to net zero.
This guy has won almost all of the, get this, 40 disability discrimination cases he's launched over the last decade. This court case is supposed to be in June. If we have a hot June, he's supposed to be hibernating then, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, OK, possibly. Let's hope that we don't have a hot June and that he's actually able to get to the court and everything else. What would seem different is the previous cases he's been taking have been all related to disability. This is related to climate change.
But because of his disability, it disproportionately affects him, he says, because of his disability.
Right, because he's vulnerable. OK, not just because of his disability. Anybody who's vulnerable to those effects that are coming. And let's just look at it for 1 second on a climate change aspect. We just had 2 weeks ago confirmation that in Antarctica, they had 38.5 degrees above the average temperature. So above the average temperature. So just imagine that coming in June or July of this year, and let's hope it never does. But just imagine taking our average temperature of 20 or 25 degrees.
We just had the wettest April.
We've just had nearly 10% extra water over these previous months, which, of course, has caused huge problems, flooding, potholes being gouged out and all these other things.
It's not over easy, is it?
And it's potentially going to be a problem for our farmers, of course, coming through. Although the ridiculous part, of course, on that, getting off topic here, but the ridiculous part on that is we're going to apparently go into a drought because we haven't stored all the water that's been coming. Yeah. Different issue. But actually looking at this, we could be having a freak 40 degree has just happened in Antarctica.
Look, where does this end at, right? Someone born with one lung, right, who also happens to have asthma, who lives through, who was born next to, like, a railway line or something like that, or born next to the M1. Do they sue the government for not doing enough to protect them? I mean, that's the logical end to this, and that's madness.
As you know, we've debated ULEZ, low traffic neighbourhoods, and all these sorts of things here, which link in with air quality, and people have been taking action related to air quality in all different sorts of levels of both courts and other appeals. So it's not unusual for people to take action based on damage to their health.
But if we are looking at, and I am not trying to diminish the vulnerability and the disability of this person, but if we reduce our government's level of responsibility to the lowest common denominator of people, OK, then we will not be able to function as a country. In order to cater for this man's needs, we would have to sink into the ocean.
Yeah, I mean, we're mixing a number of different issues here to some extent. And, I mean, it actually comes down to when you're looking at that kind of level, you're starting to come down to funding issues and everything else, and actually how much money do we have available to fund and look after people in all sorts of different circumstances. And you've heard arguments which have been aired on this show before about local government funding, children's services, adult services and all that sort of thing. And then how can you spread that money across everybody satisfactorily to make sure they all have a good life? It's difficult. So there's no question there's difficulty here. Come back to the legal part of it, is there are legal obligations on the government, both under the Climate Change Act in terms of the emissions they should be getting, the pathway for emissions, and under the European Convention on Human Rights to protect vulnerable people.
Is there any evidence whatsoever that if we had done just a little bit more in terms of the climate, that a bloke's house would not have been lost due to coastal erosion?
Of course, I couldn't tell you now that if we managed to reduce our emissions by another 5%, the guy's house wouldn't have gone. I mean, it's a very, very difficult one.
It's the sea, right? It's the sea. The world has the sea. We've got countries like India, China, etc., pumping out all of that stuff. There's nothing we could have done, sadly, is there? Sadly, because this person has lost something. I do feel for them. There's nothing we could have done to stop that happening. Why are we paying for that?
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's just switch it a little bit, but keep it on a fairly similar topic. I mean, I'm actually looking forward to the first case that says to the UK government, you haven't done enough to build the economy here. because this direction of net zero is this enormous commercial opportunity that we should be pursuing. And why aren't you pursuing it? Because if you pursued it, and we had a lot more money in the pot here, we're able to pay for protection needed, whether it's for a house, for vulnerable people, or for anything else. The government isn't doing enough in a lot of different cases. Some of those things are covered, of course, by laws at the moment where they can be sued, and some aren't. I wish we had a law that said the government isn't doing enough to grow our economy. It's not taking account of the direction of travel of the entire world, and it should be. And we'd like to be getting it done so that we can pay for these things.
If this guy could take the government to court over whether or not they're doing enough to tackle climate change because of his vulnerabilities, could people who live next to a migrant hotel not take the government to court over the issues with their own personal safety?
I would have thought under the European Convention of Human Rights they could take the government to court. Whether they'd win is completely different. And we don't know this guy's going to win either. He's
got a good track record.
No, he has got a good track record. And, and let's hope that we actually push the boundaries forward and get some of these things happening.
Good stuff. Look, Ed, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show, as ever. That is the leader of the Climate Party there, Ed Gemmell. Right, look, thank you very much for that. Doug Paulley has said this: I kind of agree with Al Gore and Greta Thunberg that concentrating on adapting to climate change is admitting defeat in tackling climate change itself. But given we are seeing climate change now and people are suffering and dying around the world as a result, it's incredibly important that governments put in suitable plans to mitigate the impacts. Coming up, Saudi fans on the lash at the football. Well, I'll tell you what the heck is going on there. But next, I will bring you the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Don't go anywhere. This is Patrick Christys Tonight. But yeah, what is this, eh?
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Showers for many of us this weekend, but towards the southeast, something a little bit drier, and that's because we have high pressure dominating over the near continent. Further north, though, a frontal system is pushing its way through, and that's going to bring some further outbreaks of rain across some parts of Scotland into northern England as we go through the night. Also, some strong gusty winds and a few showers towards the northwest of Scotland, but elsewhere, largely dry as we go through the early hours of Saturday morning, and some clear skies, but despite these, temperatures not dropping a huge amount. A touch cooler than last night, but a relatively mild start on Saturday nonetheless. First thing, there could be some murkiness, some low cloud perhaps around English Channel coastal parts, but otherwise, particularly towards the southeast, it's going to be a largely fine day. Decent amount of sunshine, a bit more cloud and some rain across northern and western parts of England and Wales. Nothing heavy here. The heaviest downpours likely across parts of Scotland. Could be some gusty winds here too. Temperatures will be down a nudge compared to today, but still a little bit above average for the time of year. Into Sunday, and it is going to be a fresher day for all of us. There will be plenty of showers piling in across parts of Northern Ireland and particularly Scotland. Some heavy, some thundery, could be some hail mixed in. Further south and east across the bulk of England and Wales, it's actually looking like a largely dry day with some decent sunshine. More showers to come as we go through Monday and to Tuesday, but it is going to be noticeably fresher than it has been of late. Bye-bye.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. It's time now for the very first look at tomorrow's front pages. Let's do it. Right, I'm going in with the Telegraph. Rayner, I will quit if guilty over house row. That, of course, is a story that we've covered quite a lot here so far this evening. But the one at the bottom of it there, Tory MPs feel Gibraltar concessions over trade. Tory MPs are feeling that the government has made concessions in trade talks on Gibraltar. Let's go to the Mirror. Bring it on. Labour's Angela, I welcome scrutiny. I'll step down if I've broken the law. Let's go to the Times. Pressure on Starmer as police look into deputy. Can I just say, we have been absolutely banging the drum for this on this show for a very, very long time, and now everybody's finally picking it up. Let's go to the Daily Mail. Rayner, I'll quit if I'm found guilty. Also an exclusive with Liz Truss. Number 10 was like living in a soulless cage with fleas, she says. The book everyone's talking about. Well, there we go. Right, OK, let's whiz you over to a couple of other stories that are going to be absolutely massive for you tomorrow. And, of course, here to help me do that, I've got Conservative parliamentary candidate Alex Dean, entrepreneur and social commentator Joanna Jarju, and political commentator Alex Armstrong. So, Spain forced the UK to cancel a Red Arrows display over Gibraltar. The Spanish official had said that Spain considered the display to be unnecessary, unconstructive and provocative. This was not the time to undertake this sort of activity. Another line in the notes read, apparently when someone underlined that this was an air show not intended for provocation or demonstration. I can't even read this tonight. Her riposte was that the two were not mutually exclusive. Right, OK, anyway. Look, Alex Dean, your views on this. The Spanish saying that we can't fly the Red Arrows over a bit of island that we own.
So this is actually a story from last year. It's emerged now, but it was the summer of 2023 when the display was supposed to take place. And you've got to ask yourself, why is this story coming out now? And the answer is the government's on the verge of signing a deal with Spain over access across the border. And some people don't like it and have sat on this material for a while and release it now in an attempt to stoke up some issues. Now, there is an issue, right? Because you shouldn't... Gibraltar is sovereign territory. It's not part of Spain. It's part of our country, and we're entitled to have an air show above it. But you've got to be realistic. It's a very small part of land with Spain right next to it. And the Spanish have...
It's got a lot of military presence.
Yeah, of course. And the other thing that comes out in the course of this story is that our flagship, Queen Elizabeth, was supposed to visit Gibraltar and didn't in the end because they were worried about sensitivities because the Spanish had objected to that too.
We own that bit of land. It's ours. Brits live on it. We've got to...
Sure.
Yeah, the point
I'm seeking to make is that both the non-visit of the Queen Elizabeth and the non-Red Arrows display were kept quiet diplomatically until now, and someone's chosen to leak it.
OK, I mean, other Alex, I'll go to you on this. Apparently the government has made concessions in trade talks on Gibraltar in order to appease Spain and reach a post-Brexit trade deal. You know, are we just being too weak in? I mean, why on earth should we listen to them when it says don't fly the Red Arrows over that rock?
Oh, you took the words out of my mouth. Weak is the word of the day on this one. You know, what really is concerning is that David Cameron and Sunak are inching closer to the Schengen zone, the EU Schengen zone, as a solution to solving this land border with Gibraltar and Spain. It's just another demonstration of how weak the Tories have become on Brexit. They seem uncommitted to filling this role. And also weak with our military. We've got one of the best militaries in the world, and we're scared of what? Upsetting the Spanish, for goodness sake.
I don't think it's necessarily about weakness. I think Gibraltar is another oversight when you compare it to Northern Ireland. It's another one where, you know, if they are kind of making concessions, it's probably because they kind of have to when we're kind of on the back foot, in my opinion. So I think that they will try to appease them just to get something over the line and to get another tick to say that Brexit is actually working. And they won't look into the finer details of what people actually want a real Brexit to be, like not going closer to the Schengen zone.
I don't think it's an oversight. I campaigned for Brexit and I went to Gibraltar because of the issues you're talking about, and I campaigned there too, not just in the United Kingdom. But I make the separate point. This ambassador, our ambassador to Spain, who wanted to make these concessions to the Spanish, is the same ambassador who got into an argument with Dominic Raab, who said you're being too soft in negotiations, and ultimately his complaint is what led to Dominic Raab's resignation. So there's form here. This is not the first time.
Cracking insight. Now, look, it's been quite the week for woke ideologies being humiliated by common sense studies. And here's another one for you. New research from Econ Journal Watch has found that there is no evidence that diverse management teams boost profits, casting doubts on existing studies by McKinsey consultancy. So the McKinsey research has been widely used by business groups and campaigners to advocate for changes in the way employers recruit staff and apprentices. Joanna, is it time for businesses to abandon DEI, embrace just good old-fashioned meritocracy?
Absolutely not. I think that, to kind of, obviously, it was good for diversity and inclusion to have a case to say that, profits actually align with DE&I solutions. But I think that, this is about society as well. It's about giving people opportunity. When we talk about diversity and inclusion, when it comes to female leaders and having more CEOs and the FTSE companies, we don't kind of...
But don't we just want them to be the best for the job? I mean, this is the thing. If you are going on Dragon's Den and you're after investment and you say, look, OK, this is the business plan, this is the profits, this is the thing, but what I'm also going to do is just completely randomly introduce a load of people that won't in any way, shape or form make the business any better, then what's the point?
Because it doesn't make sense that, for example, when you look at all of the CEOs that run the biggest companies in this country, that they just miraculously are white men that, over the age of 40 or over the age of 50. Realistically, if you opened it up and actually gave other people a chance, you'd be able to get that opportunity. You get more women on boards, you get more women CEOs. So it's not just about race.
What if there's no evidence that would improve anything at all?
Well, I was just going to say, just on that point, just on the DEI point, it's the same as the sort of the SNP's Hums Are Useless, going white about every person who runs something, an institution in Scotland. It shouldn't make a difference whether you're white or brown or black or whatever skin colour you are. Positive discrimination, the key word in it is discrimination. And we're seeing a lot of young white boys being not able to get into jobs because they're losing out based on their skin colour.
I don't think this is a debate about diversity. I think this is a debate about rigour in research. And McKinsey refused to allow anyone to have sight of the data they'd looked at for their conclusions or how they'd reached those conclusions. Now, there is a veneer of the DEI debate over the top of that, which is that because it had such a positive conclusion for what people wanted to believe about the workplace, nobody actually challenged them and said, how have you come to these conclusions?
But I think
it's extraordinary that the first time someone really went to them and said, can we test this data and look at it, McKinsey said no. This case study has been talked about so broadly and used so much in business. This isn't actually a DEI debate at all. It's about somebody who's championed research that they're not actually willing to stand up.
Yeah.
Well, but I think that even in this argument, when people do talk about diversity and inclusion, it is a factor that they talk about profits, but I don't think it's all of it, and I don't think it's the leading factor either. I think society is changing, and actually
That's totally fair, but that's not what McKinsey said.
Can I just say, I think you would be really upset as well by this, Joanna, if I gave you a job and said the only reason you got this job over someone else is because you're a black woman.
Of course.
Right? And I think that is what the crux of the problem is. It's like, you will get the job because you are the best person for that job, and I wouldn't want to be
But would I have even had the opportunity to be considered? It's about also the stages before that. And when we talk about stuff like this, especially when it comes to higher levels of management, it's also about middle management as well and the route to get there and the opportunities to get there.
OK.
So it's much broader.
All right, good stuff. Now, look, here's the moment when a spectator at a football match got whipped up by rage at his team losing at the Saudi Super Cup last night. Watch. OK, there he is. You see it? The player comes over and the whip comes out. Let's just, I think we're going to replay that a couple of times here. So, essentially, this is the Al Ittihad striker, Abarazak Hamdallah, household name, getting assaulted with an actual Stone Age-like whip by a fan after he threw water in his direction during a confrontation. The team were beaten 4-1 by Al Hilal, so the whole thing is completely justified, clearly. But, yeah, look, he's come over, splayed water, he's got the whip out, and he's genuinely started lashing a striker. I mean, goodness gracious me. There you go. I made the point earlier on, who carries a whip around? And then I thought, well, maybe this is a common thing in Saudi Arabia. I don't know. But look, coming up, yes, from one thing completely bonkers to another thing completely bonkers. What's happening here? I'll reveal all and more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Stay tuned.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
SUV drivers in Oxford will face higher parking charges. Proposals tabled by the local Green Party or passed by the City Council. The motion argues that heavier cars like SUVs cause more damage to roads, are more likely to seriously injure or kill pedestrians, and cause more illnesses due to pollution. However, the Alliance of British Drivers has condemned the plan as absolutely outrageous. Well, let's get the thoughts now of the legendary motoring journalist, Quentin Wilson. Quentin, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure. We hear a lot about the war on motorists, this time targeting SUVs because of their weight, and the charges could be astronomical. This idea first started in Paris. Now it's coming to Oxford. Can you tell us a bit about how it would work?
OK, so the idea is that the charges will penalise people who drive heavier SUVs and I guess by implication electric cars, although Oxford Council haven't said exactly what they're going to do with EVs. But this is all based around this notion of SUVs being heavier than passenger cars, therefore wearing out the roads more. Now, there was a study, I've got it here in front of me, from the University of Edinburgh in 2022 that said real-world tests found that overwhelmingly the wear is caused by large vehicles, buses, heavy good vehicles. Road wear from cars and motorcycles is so low that this is immaterial. Now, obviously, driving around a medieval city like Oxford in an SUV isn't the brightest thing in the world to do. But the idea that we should penalise the owners of these cars based on imperfect science that's been read on social media, I think is completely wrong.
OK, welcome back. I've got more of tomorrow's front pages for you. Let's do it. OK, we're going with The Sun. Nightmare. Gordon's posh eatery invaded by squatters. Exclusive. Ramsay's Kitchen. So a gang of squatters has set up home in telly chef Gordon Ramsay's swanky £13 million pub. So it must be a big pub, that. They used his own cooking appliances to barricade themselves inside the Grade 2 listed building near Regent's Park in central London. It's interesting, that, isn't it? I remember when people did something very similar at one of Gary Neville's ventures, and obviously he was caught between a rock and a hard place because he's essentially a Labour Party activist now, isn't he? And he was like, well, I can't be seen evicting squatters, but I think they might have done it on the QT. Anyway, The Independent. Exclusive. NHS chief, we must stamp out surge in sex assaults on staff. This is our Me Too moment, writes NHS chief executive as she announces crackdown on abuse of doctors and nurses. They say that there's obviously been a massive rise and it needs to stop.
By members of the public or by each other?
So The Independent has highlighted shocking sexual abuse against staff in the health service. They said it's abuse faced by doctors and nurses. I'm trying to get to the point where it says who's actually doing this, actually, but...
suspected is the public.
It's suspected it's the public, including, unfortunately, rape, being groped or shown pornography. So, look, very, very serious stuff there on the front of The Independent. Daily Express. Hunt, we've done the hard yards, now I will cut taxes and bet on growth. Chancellor says it's time to release the handbrake on the economy issues. We go to The Guardian. End cruel prosecution of carers, Sunak urged. The scandalous prosecution of unpaid carers uncovered by The Guardian must end now and an inquiry launched immediately. So Rishi Sunak being told. Let's go to The Eye for the final front page of the day. UK intelligence officials targeted in honey-trap sex plots by Chinese spies. British intelligence officers are being repeatedly targeted in blackmail attempts. Chinese agents try to start sexual relationships in a bid to compromise security. Well, there we go. Right, OK, just one I would like to focus on a bit quickly here, really, I think, is this this NHS exclusive that we've got on The Independent. I mean, it is absolutely staggering, really, that you can end up in a situation where this really does take place. I mean, I'm not really sure what the answer is, apart from, are we going to end up with police officers essentially chaining themselves to the beds or just loitering in A&E?
Well, police are often in A&E anyway. If they've accompanied someone who's been injured in the course of a suspected offence, you'll find police officers in A&E wards throughout their entire shift and then get replaced afterwards. Police officers are also, currently at least, often in hospitals because they're accompanying people on mental health issues. It's one of the things that Chief Constables have said we've got to stop doing if we're going to free up police to do what we're supposed to be doing. They've got to get over this. But I return to the question I asked you when we were looking at the headlines, because I think not obviously both are bad. If it's the public assaulting the staff of the NHS, then we've got to protect our doctors and nurses. If it's a cultural issue within the NHS and it's being done by one another, if it's doctors raping doctors or nurses groping up other nurses...
Can I just say... I'm just getting a bit more detail on this now from my wonderful colleagues behind the glass there who have been able to read more detail on this story. They're saying it appears to be a combination of both patients and staff, which is staggering. I mean, it implies that there's just a devastating culture maybe in society generally, doesn't it, I suppose, Joanna?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like Alex said, if it is the public to doctors, I think A&E, we know that is absolute chaos anyway, if anybody's ever been in there, in terms of just violence, you know? So I think that it's a conversation that we don't really probably have enough of how they can actually safeguard their staff. I believe in everything when it comes to diversity and inclusion, but I think that also this is another side of things that they should implement proper training on to help doctors and nurses stay safe.
Yeah, I mean, I sense this is going to be a big story for quite a while to come, as it should be, really, I suppose. It's the Independent's exclusive there. I'm just going to move things on slightly now, because we are a bit pressed for time, and it's time for something completely different, as they say. Two other news. Elvis is recovering after routine dental surgery this week. No, not that Elvis. I am talking about the 15.5-foot crocodile who had 7 Australian zookeepers in a frenzy as they tried to fix his ingrown tooth. Should we have a little look?
Myself and the team have jumped on him. I drive straight into his head. I've got my arms around his jaws like this. And then all of a sudden...
Under first?
Yeah, under. Bang, I just get hit in the head. I don't even know what it was. And I knew at that stage I had to get myself and the team out of there. We were in serious danger.
Oh, my... Look at the tooth! Look at the tooth! Look at the size of it! You'll be glad to hear that Elvis's tooth was removed and he's recovering well. That is absolutely unbelievable. The bruised zookeeper is still all shook up. Hey, there you go. Well done, Elvis. I tell you what, braver men than me, you would not see me doing anything like that.
Makes British dentistry look easy, doesn't it?
It was at that point I decided I'd just leave it to have toothache. Just forget it.
Exactly. Well, look, guys, it's time now to reveal tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Alex Dean, who is your Greatest Britain, please?
I'm really sorry, I can't remember who I chose.
Oh, here we go. Don't worry. We'll get it. We will get it in my ear in a second. There we go. Dr. Martin Hall.
The reason I didn't want to take his name in vain, and I'm glad I didn't because I'd have said the wrong name. Research conducted into why wine gets corked, and it looks like Dr. Hall has solved an enormous and quite pressing question for many of us who like wine. As you know, many supermarkets shifting to screw taps only have kind of undermined the cork industry. They've been desperate to get back to the tradition of cork breathing, and he's got this incredible lengthy. I'm not going to summarise it very well, but everything from where you keep cork, how you leave it, cutting off the damp bits and so forth. And that is God's work, in my view.
Do you reckon, everyone goes around saying put a cork in it?
Yeah, well, I don't think they say put a screw cap on it, do they?
No. Right, Joanna, who's your Greatest Britain, please?
Mine is Greatest Britain and hero of the day, I'd say. 6-year-old girl from North Yorkshire who saved her family from a burning house. So she went and woke her mum, who was asleep, to say, wake the baby and get out, and they all survived. So absolute hero and Greatest Britain.
Absolute hero. OK, go on. Other Alex.
Well, I love to survey expectations on this part of the show, Patrick. So I have picked Sir Keir Starmer. No, I haven't had a stroke.
No way.
I picked Sir Keir Starmer. Why? Why? Because he has pledged to boost defence spending to 2.5%, which I know my colleagues in the military would have absolutely loved.
That is interesting, actually, that if he's won over the military community... Remember when they were firing at pictures of Jeremy Corbyn and stuff?
Absolutely.
Not long ago. Right, today's winner of the Greatest Britain is... It's Olivia Lee Patterson for doing something absolutely amazing, as Joanna was saying there. A little girl there who's managed to save her entire family, pretty much, so well done. Who's your Union Jackass?
I do know this, and I apologise to your staff had put it on piece of paper for me, and I still goofed it. David Miller, who you will have seen has temporarily at least won against Bristol University because his anti-Semitic or anti-Zionist, depending on perspective, views have been judged not to have broken our equality laws. That's why he lost his role in the first place. And he has decided to go write op-eds about how cool he is and how that's great. I think anyone sensible in his position had been accused of those things would have taken better part of valour and kept his head down.
Needless to say, the notoriously litigious man involved in that story denies all wrongdoing. Right, go on, Joanna, who's your Union Jackass, please?
Mine is the Reform Party, particularly the leadership, for deselecting a guy for inactivity when it turns out that he was actually dead all that time.
In their defence,
terrible.
He wasn't.
Should have stayed. He might have won.
Terrible. Apparently, they said they were mortified. I don't know if it was pun intended or not.
Very good, very good. Well, come on, I've got to make up for nominating Keir Starmer. So, of course, my Union Jackass is Angela Rayner for the pure hypocrisy that we've spoken about today, and I'm sure all weekend. You can't hold other people to different standards, can you, Angela?
All right, OK, today's Union Jackass is Angela Rayner.
I'm on a roll every week.
Again denies all wrongdoing. Right, thank you to everybody who's been watching and tuning in. I will see you on Monday at 9. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Showers for many of us this weekend, but towards the southeast, something a little bit drier, and that's because we have high pressure dominating over the near continent. Further north, though, a frontal system is pushing its way through, and that's going to bring some further outbreaks of rain across some parts of Scotland into northern England as we go through the night. Also, some strong gusty winds and a few showers towards the northwest of Scotland, but elsewhere, largely dry as we go through the early hours of Saturday morning, and some clear skies, but despite these temperatures not dropping a huge amount. A touch cooler than last night, but a relatively mild start on Saturday nonetheless. First thing, there could be some murkiness, some low cloud perhaps around English Channel coastal parts, but otherwise, particularly towards the southeast, it's going to be a largely fine day. Decent amount of sunshine, a bit more cloud and some rain across northern and western parts of England and Wales. Nothing heavy here. The heaviest downpours likely across parts of Scotland. Could be some gusty winds here too. Temperatures will be down a nudge compared to today, but still a little bit above average for the time of year. Into Sunday, and it is going to be a fresher day for all of us. There will be plenty of showers piling in across parts of Northern Ireland and particularly Scotland. Some heavy, some thundery, could be some hail mixed in. Further south and east across the bulk of England and Wales, it's actually looking like a largely dry day with some decent sunshine. More showers to come as we go through Monday and to Tuesday, but it is going to be noticeably fresher than it has been of late. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Variety Cruises have been sailing since 1942, and thanks to them, you could set sail in 2025. You have the chance to win a 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With your flights, meals, drinks and excursions included, you can choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. You'll also win an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash that you can use to make this summer spectacular. We'll also treat you to these luxury travel gifts. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Good evening.